So the first step is beginning to identify some risks. This is a topic that's talked about in some of the podcast in greater detail, but a brief overview here is hopefully early on after your team has been put together and you have all of the different all of the various representatives for the different pieces of the project in one room, you can sit down and have a brainstorming session on trying to identify potential risks to the project. And this can be a very informal meeting where people just throw out, okay, any and every potential risk that you can think of. Just throw it out there. And then once we have that list of risks, then we can talk about them. We can rank them in terms of what they collectively come to as a collective sense of the relative importance of certain risks, and then starting to think about what might be some of the potential responses to this risk. And all of those you can just keep a very simple a simple Excel spreadsheet that is your risk register of, okay, this is our list of identified risks that are described in as much detail as you can. One way that you can think of it, you can think about the risk as a risk is an event that happens. Okay, so let's identify the risk, but then let's also discuss its impact. Kind of classic example of risk identification. Well, okay, weddings are classic examples of projects. Well, one of the decisions that you make in planning a wedding is where are you going to have the wedding? And you can say, well, I want to have it in a church, I want to have it here, but do you want to have it indoors or do you want to have it outdoors? Well, lots of people, myself included, really would prefer to have an outdoor wedding. That in itself is a statement about a person's risk tolerance of, if you want to have an outdoor wedding, are you willing to take the risks that come with having an outdoor wedding? Chief among those risks is the weather. And the weather is a risk. You have no control over the weather. No person has control over it. So you can make the decision, yes, I'm going to pick a location that has some risk inherent to it. Well, what can we do to mitigate that risk? Well, if you can plan the primary location will be outside, but in case of inclement weather, I'm going to book another facility where we can move things to if we have to once we know more about the weather, which was actually the risk response that that was my risk mitigation strategy. And it had, thankfully for me, the weather worked out, but had it not worked out, then the response to that would have been, okay, now it's time to move this whole event indoors. So identifying risk is just that process of thinking about, either by yourself or as a group, what are the risks to this project? What uncertainties are we facing? Making the list of those uncertainties and thinking about what potential responses to them might be. Now, it's very easy to get a big number of risks in short order. Through this generation, you could wind up with 100 risks, and that's a number. It's going to be really hard to proactively address all of these potential risks, which means that you have to come up with some way of thinking about and sorting and categorizing and prioritizing your risk, which is what the next two processes really allow you to do in performing qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. So let's move on and focus some attention on those.